Session 3, Unlocking Your Potential.
When we talk about human potential, have you ever wondered what accounts for the huge disparity in results and performance between one person and another? You know, a person who's making $250,000 a year is not 10 times smarter or better than a person who's making $25,000 a year. Why is there 10 times the difference in income? And you go all the way up the ladder to a person who's making $2.5 million a year. Is that person 100 times better, smarter than the person making $25,000 a year? Impossible. In a recent study of IQs, they picked 1,000 men and women out of the population and tested them for IQ. They found that the top person in that 1,000 selection was only 2.5 times smarter than the bottom person in that selection of IQs. Only 2.5 times the disparity, and that's probably true over the whole population. So what accounts for this great difference? Well, we talk about human potential. We come down to a very simple formula that I came up with some years ago that probably explains it a little bit. The formula starts off with what we call IA, which is inborn attributes. That's the qualities, the intelligence, the ability, the temperament, the things that you're born with that you can't really change very much, plus acquired attributes. Now, acquired attributes are very important. Those are your education, your training, your skill, your experience, knowledge, wisdom, and so on. Multiplied times A, which is your attitude, equals individual human potential, or individual human performance, or individual human results, if you like. Now, of these three, inborn attributes are largely fixed at birth. Acquired attributes can be changed, but it takes a while to change them, although sometimes they can be changed very rapidly. One valuable piece of information can dramatically change your effectiveness. But attitudes can be increased or decreased dramatically in seconds. That every single time we improve our attitude, we multiply all our capabilities. So that attitude has been rightly called the most important language in the human, or the most important word in the human language. Everything that we do in life, according to a Harvard study amongst executive recruiters, will be 85% attitudinal. 85% of your success will be determined by your attitude. That means determined by how positive or how much of a positive mental attitude you have. People with positive mental attitudes tend to advance more rapidly, move to the top of valuable organizations, earn more money, get more life satisfaction, and so on. Now, a positive mental attitude doesn't mean that you dance around in the street and throw flowers. It just means that you take a generally constructive attitude or approach towards your work, your life, your problems, your relationships, and so on. That according to the Cox Report on American Business, according to Success Magazine, 85% or more of everything that you accomplish will be attitudinal. So our question is, where do attitudes come from? And we found that attitudes come from expectations. Very, very simple. We talked about that before. And a very powerful way to instantaneously improve your attitude is to say to yourself, I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today. As we said before, our expectations about outcomes determines our attitude. In other words, if you expect things to turn out well, you're going to have a positive attitude. If you expect things to turn out negatively, you're going to have a negative attitude. And the wonderful thing is you can manufacture your own expectations. I mean, you can expect whatever you want. You can expect good things, you can expect negative things, and chances are you won't be disappointed. Where do our expectations come from? Our expectations come from our beliefs, if you like, and our values. These are the core or the central motivating factors in our personality, our beliefs and values. And this brings us to an understanding of human potential. It means that basically our attitude is the outward expression of what is going on internally, consistent with the mental laws that we talked about. And with regard to beliefs, each of us has a bundle of beliefs way down deep inside, which psychologists call the self-concept. Now, the self-concept, or the discovery of it, has been considered by many to be the most important single breakthrough in understanding human performance in the 20th century, and I personally agree. The self-concept is like, if you wanted to use a military analogy, is the command center. Or if you wanted to use a technological analogy, it is the central program of your basic computer. It is a bundle of beliefs, values, attitudes, feelings, ideas, and so on, which are stored away down inside, which are a result of virtually every experience you've ever had in your life. And some researchers say that the self-concept begins to form even before birth. But this self-concept, once it is in place, precedes, predicts, and determines your levels of effectiveness and performance in every area of your life. Your self-concept becomes the command center or the master program. The self-concept, or this bundle of beliefs, then determines what you will say, what you will do, how you will act, how you feel and react, and so on. What does it mean? It means that all improvements in your external life, all changes in your reality begin with a change in the self-concept. Let me give you an understanding of how it means. Here's a very simple graph. We talk about human potential. We say the average person uses 10% or less of their potential. According to the research, it's probably much less. Stanford Brain Institute in Santa Clara, California, estimates that it's probably closer to 2%. But we'll be generous and we'll say the average person is using 10%. It means that in the best of cases, the average person, you and I, have 90% of our potential untapped. One of the great philosophers, Oliver Wendell Holmes, said the great tragedy of the average person is that they go to their grave with their music still in them. They're still functioning on far, far less of their potential. So this is human potential. We find there's a direct relationship between human potential and the self-concept. That since our self-concepts, or our estimates of ourselves, if you like, are usually far lower than they need to be, our level of performance and effectiveness is far lower too. And we know that our self-concept is largely subjective. What does that mean? It means that the self-concept, what we believe to be true about ourselves, is really not based in reality. It's based on information that we've taken in, we accept it as true, and to the degree to which you believe anything about yourself, it becomes true for you because you act in a manner consistent with it. You know, there's some people who read their horoscopes and believe that their horoscopes are predicting their future. There's some people who will take criticism and condemnation from other people that they don't even respect and believe that that is an adequate or accurate reflection of their own abilities. But whatever you believe, whatever you accept as true, becomes true for you. Now, we also know that as an adult, you have a variety of self-concepts. You have a self-concept for how you dress, how much you weigh, how much you eat, how well you speak in public, what kind of a parent you are, what kind of a child you are to your parents, what kind of a husband or wife you are, what kind of a lover, what kind of a driver. Interesting about driving. All men have a very positive self-concept with regard to driving. Women don't understand this, but all men are born with an inherent genius at driving. That men are all great drivers. And if you don't believe it, all you have to do, ladies who are watching this, all you have to do is think about the last time you've tried to correct a man's driving. You'll find it is not well responded to. How do we respond when somebody challenges our self-concept by suggesting that we are not the person we think we are? We become defensive, we become angry, we become irritable, we become difficult to get along with. We have a self-concept for how creative we are, how intelligent, how fast we read, how good we are at athletics. And if you practice a variety of different sports, you have a self-concept for every one of those sports. We have a self-concept for how well we cook, how well we raise our children, how well we clean our home, what kind of cars we drive, and so on. We also have a self-concept for what it's worth, for how much money we earn. Interestingly enough, you can never earn more than 10% above or below your self-concept level of income. That your self-concept determines your income level. This self-concept level is called your comfort zone. And even if you want more money, you will find that the natural human tendency of all action is to struggle and strive to get into a comfort zone and then to stay there. That if you earn 10% or more above your self-concept level of income, you will have an irresistible urge to get rid of the money. You'll give it away, you'll spend it, you'll blow it, you'll spend it extravagantly, you'll even lose it if you get enough. That's why people who win lotteries are often flat broke 2 or 3 years later. They just burn the money because the money is far beyond their self-concept. If you go 10% or more below your self-concept level of income, you find yourself scrambling. You work harder, you work longer, you think more creatively, you look at different ways to increase your income or second income opportunities. The only way to improve any part of your life, including your income, is to raise your self-concept level of income by beginning to think about yourself continually in terms of earning more money. If you want to lose weight, the only way you can lose weight is what? Is to think thin, by beginning to think of yourself as a thinner person. If you want to become a more popular, a more loving, a happier person, a healthier person, you have to begin to think over and over about those things until they become part of your new self-concept. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. It's an essential part of programming your mind for success. Your overall self-concept is determined by the average of your self-concepts in all the areas that you consider important. Now, your self-concept is made up of 3 critical parts. The first part of the self-concept is the self-ideal. The self-ideal is the person you would most like to be. It is your idea of what constitutes a winner. It is your vision or your mission or your ideal of the very best you that you can be. Now, one of the things that we know about successful people is this, is successful people have very clear self-ideals. They have very clear ideas of who they want to be in the future. Unsuccessful people have very vague ideals. Number two is your self-image. Your self-image is a picture of the way you see yourself and the way you think about yourself. Your self-image, the inner mirror, is how you perceive yourself now and determines your current performance on a day-to-day basis. The third part is your self-esteem. Now, your self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. How you feel about yourself is the engine force, it's the motor, it's the power force within your subconscious. It's the power force within the self-concept, and it determines virtually everything that happens to you. The best definition of self-esteem is how much you like yourself. How much you like yourself as a parent, how much you like yourself as an employee, how much you like yourself as a boss, how much you like yourself as a money earner, a professional speaker, an athlete, and so on. How much you like yourself, your level of self-esteem, your overall emotional feeling about any area of your life determines your performance and effectiveness in that area. Wonderfully enough, since you become what you think about, your self-concept is malleable, your self-esteem can be built by repeating over and over again, I like myself. 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 The more you say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, the more you repeat that over and over again, the more your self-esteem goes up. The more your self-esteem goes up, the more your overall self-concept goes up. When your overall self-concept goes up, you perform better at everything else that you attempt. That every single time you say, I like myself, 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 it's like pumping yourself up psychologically. Everything that happens that causes your self-esteem to go up causes you to perform better. Everything that happens that causes your self-esteem to go down causes you to perform worse, make more mistakes, be unhappier, and so on. Now, a critical point about liking yourself, about self-esteem and self-liking, is that number one is you can never like or love anybody else more than you like or love yourself. That your level of self-esteem is the determinant of the quality of the relationships you have with others. And number two is you can never expect anybody else to like or respect you more than you like or respect yourself. That how much you like and respect yourself determines their attitudes toward you. Every single school of psychology today is coming to agreement on the fact that how much you genuinely like and accept yourself as a valuable and worthwhile human being has an effect on everything that happens to you. How much you like yourself. And what you can do is you can improve your self-esteem, but then I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. Well, this brings us to the question of where does self-esteem, where does the self-concept come from? And we found that self-concept, if anything, self-concept is malleable in that you are not born with a self-concept. Is that you're not born with any idea of yourself. You're not born with self-image or self-esteem, that you're born in a way as pure potential. Probably the best way to put it. The average person comes into the world as pure potential and has no self-concept. That everything you are today, every feeling that you have, every attitude or value, you had to learn over the course of your lifetime. We also know that the child comes into the world with a very high need for love and touching. And a tremendous amount of research indicates that we need a lot of love and touching all of our lives, but especially in our formative years, because as a child, we learn who we are, how valuable we are, whether we're important, intelligent, attractive, lovable, funny. We learn all of these things by the way our parents treat us. If our parents, our siblings, our aunts and uncles, but especially our parents, treat us like we're really important kids, then we grow up thinking that we're really important. If our parents do not, then something else happens. We know that the first few years of life are the most important in developing the self-concept. That a child starts off at zero when the child is born with no idea of who she is or who he is or how valuable they are, and in the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth years of life, and the psychologists used to think it was 5 years, but now they're saying it's 3 years. In these first 3 years of life, children learn who they are. They say if you give enough high quality and quantity of love to a child in the first 3 to 5 years, you set them up for life. You set them up on a solid foundation of self-esteem, self-confidence, self-worth, self-value. As a matter of fact, there's a direct relationship between the quality and quantity of love and the development of healthy personality. That the more love, unconditional love that a child receives in those formative years, the stronger is the foundation of the personality. To reverse the equation, that virtually all problems in psychosis, neurosis, personality disturbances, and behavior problems arise from problems way down in the self-concept. And we can go back as adults. Here's our adult personality. We can go back as adults. We can correct the flaws in our foundation, the cracks, if you like, by repeating over and over again, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, and driving down that healing concrete deep into the foundation of our personality. Remember, children need love like roses need rain. Children that are deprived of love often die of love starvation. It's a disease called marasmus. Now, what else do we know about children? We know that children come into the world with two remarkable attributes. The first is that they're fearless. Children are born with no fears. They're not afraid of anything except falling and loud noises. And this is expressed in the attitude, I can. Children come into the world believing they can do anything. And anybody who's ever raised a child to the age of 3 or 4 or 5 knows you have to spend those first few years stopping them from killing themselves because they're little kamikaze pilots, because they're not afraid of anything. The second attribute is they come into the world completely spontaneous. They say what they want, they do what they want. They are completely uninhibited. They just are completely unafraid. They do anything that they want. And this is expressed in the attitude, I don't have to. I don't have to. If you ever try to control a child, you'll find that the attitude of a young child, the first thing they say is when you start giving them orders, the first thing they learn is no. They say, no, I don't have to. Well, of course, we eventually change their minds on that one way or another. But these are the two attributes that each of us come into the world with. You come into the world unafraid and uninhibited. What does that mean? It means that our natural birthright is to be unafraid and uninhibited. And that only when we can create the same situation in adult life where we are unafraid and uninhibited do we feel truly great about ourselves. The very best organizations, the very best companies are those that create an environment where people who feel unafraid and unreserved to be themselves and to do the very best they can. Well, as we grow up, we know that children learn two ways. The first way they learn is by imitation. They imitate one or both parents, especially the dominant parent. And sometimes the dominant parent will change as the child is growing up. Sometimes children will imitate the father, sometimes the mother, but they learn by imitation. Many of the characteristics and habits that we have as adults, we learn from our parents. Have you ever had the opportunity or the occasion to scream at one of your children or shout at one of them and find yourself saying the same things your mother or father said to you when you were a child? Well, we imitate. Sometimes we imitate their walk. Sometimes we imitate their talk. Sometimes we imitate their values, their beliefs, and so on, even if those values and beliefs are of no value. Why? It's because our parents are like gods to us when we're children. The second way that we learn is by moving from discomfort, from what doesn't feel good, toward comfort. Now, Freud called this the pleasure principle, is that we move toward what makes us feel comfortable, what gives us pleasure, what makes us feel good about ourselves. We move from discomfort toward comfort. That's how we learn to become toilet trained. We say it's no longer fun to walk around with pee and poop in our diapers. So we watch what our parents do. We watch what our older siblings do. And we see, those people aren't doing this. And that's how we learn to walk. That's how we learn everything. So we move from discomfort toward comfort. Throughout our lives, by the way, that's how we learn. We imitate by reading what other people have done, by studying books, at our work. We imitate when we go to school. And we do what gives us a positive payoff, what gives us positive reinforcement, what gives us pleasure. And we do less of those things that give us discomfort or pain. Now, very early in life, as a mistake or as the result of mistakes that parents make in upbringing, children begin to learn negative habit patterns. And negative habit patterns have their root primarily in destructive criticism. Destructive criticism begins very early in life, sometimes in the first few months. And destructive criticism is used by parents to direct and control their children. Unfortunately, it has a very, very dangerous and damaging effect on children in that destructive criticism begins to undermine the integrity of the child's personality. And more of us, including myself and including most of you, have been undermined and hurt by destructive criticism probably more than all the wars in history. Now, as a result of destructive criticism, we begin to develop negative habit patterns. Negative habit patterns are conditioned responses to stimuli. Negative habit patterns develop very early in life. They're developed as a result of a repetition of fear and pain over and over again. They're developed as the result of destructive criticism, physical punishment, and so on. And very early in life, we begin to develop two major manifestations which follow us throughout our lives and, more than anything else, inhibit our potential as adults. The first is what is called the inhibitive negative habit pattern. The inhibitive negative habit pattern is learned when the child is told over and over again, don't. Get away from there. Stop. Leave that alone. And the child is punished. Whenever the child tries something new or gets into something or smells something or pours something over or breaks something accidentally, the parent blows up and gets angry and upset. You see, the child is driven by an insatiable curiosity to explore his or her world. And what happens is when they do explore it and they get into something, they tip something over, if the parent overreacts and spanks the child soon begins to think that every time I try something new, every time I try something different, every time I go beyond my boundaries, every time I move out of my comfort zone, every time I don't play it safe, I get spanked, I get punished, I get hurt, I get sent to my bedroom, and I feel terrible. And pretty soon the child develops the feeling of, I can't. Every time I try something different, I get punished. I can't. This is like the Pavlovian response, where the Pavlov would ring the bell and feed the dog meat, and the dog would salivate, and Pavlov would ring the bell while he fed the dog meat, and the dog would salivate. They would keep doing that. Pretty soon, Pavlov could just ring the bell and the dog would salivate. What happens in adult life is that this creates what we call the fear of failure. The fear of failure is a conditioned response to a process of destructive criticism that occurs in the first 5 or 6 years of life. The fear of failure automatically triggers us. We feel anxious, tense, uneasy. We feel tension and stress in our solar plexus. We feel like withdrawing and getting away from the event. And the fear of failure is the major reason for failure in adult life. It's the major reason why we hold back from fulfilling our potentials. As a matter of fact, all negative habit patterns are experienced in the physical body. That you can tell a negative habit pattern because you actually feel it in your physical body. The inhibitive negative habit pattern, the fear of failure, the I can't, is experienced first of all in the solar plexus. You ever have an occasion where you have to speak in front of a group, or you have to go into a performance review, or you have to make a cold call? First of all, the solar plexus tightens up. If the fear situation continues, you start to breathe harder, and your heart starts to beat faster, your respiratory rate. And sometimes you get a headache, like a migraine headache in the front of your head. Sometimes your throat will tighten up and you won't be able to speak. You'll go completely dry. Sometimes you'll get so tense and so frightened that you'll have to run and go to the bathroom. These are all manifestations. There's no physical danger, but there's a psychological danger, a conditioned response. And whenever we feel these things, the natural tendency is to back away from the situation that's causing them, which is the reason why we don't achieve very much if we are held back. The second negative habit pattern is the compulsive. Now, the compulsive negative habit pattern is learned when children are told over and over again, you'd better or else. If you don't, you're in big trouble. Now you're going to get it. It's when children are made the recipients of what is called conditional love. Parents don't mean to do this, but what they do is they suggest to the child that you are not loved, therefore you're not safe, unless and until you do what we want. The child grows up feeling that I have to do what Mommy wants. I have to please Mommy. I have to please Daddy. I have to please other people. I have to please my siblings. Eventually I have to please my peers. I have to please my teachers. I have to please everybody. They grow up with this, I have to. I can't do what I want to do. I have to do what pleases other people. This compulsive negative habit pattern very early in life translates into the fear of rejection. The fear of rejection is experienced by men as adults as type A behavior. We'll talk about type A behavior later on in the course. Type A behavior is a compulsive, an obsessive-compulsive need to somehow please somebody with no standards of performance so that you can never accomplish it. The fear of rejection drives us. It makes us very, very sensitive to the opinions of other people. We do things that other people want. We don't do things that we want. We're always trying to please others. We have a preoccupation or a concern with the opinions and feelings and attitudes of others to the point where we deny our own needs. Now, the fear of rejection is felt down the back half of the body. If you divide the body in half, it's felt right down the back half of the body. The first place you start to feel the fear of rejection is usually in the shoulders and in the neck. You start to feel stiff and sore and tense. Sometimes when you have a lot to do, you'll feel tremendous stress in the lower back. The muscles will start to pull in the lower back. Sometimes it'll manifest itself in phlebitis and varicose veins. Very often it can give you very bad headaches in the back of the head because the carotid arteries, which carry blood up into the head, the muscles around them constrict, and the amount of blood flow to the head slows down, and you feel this pounding headache in the back of your head. These two fears, the compulsive, or these two negative habit patterns, the compulsive and the inhibitive, which are the result of destructive criticism, the great destroyer of personalities, plague us all our lives. Now, the wonderful thing about these is because they are learned habits, we can unlearn them. We can overcome the fear of failure that holds us back. We can overcome the fear of rejection that causes us to do things that please other people rather than pleasing ourselves by working on our own self-esteem. Because there is an inverse relationship between self-esteem and the basic negative habit patterns. Is the more you like yourself, the less you fear failure. The more you like yourself, the less you fear rejection. The more you like yourself, the less you fear anything. And if you continue to repeat, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, over and over again, if you continue to say this, eventually, over time, your self-esteem goes up higher and higher and higher, and your fears go down. As your self-esteem goes up, your fears go in the opposite direction. Now, how do you deal with destructive criticism if you have to give criticism to other people? Well, that's very simple. Many parents have asked us that. How do you control children? One of the keys to controlling children is to redirect them so that they're doing something constructive versus something that is destructive. Another thing to remember is that what you want to do is you want to give informational criticism or constructive criticism, which means that you tell children what they can do, or adults, what they can do to be better. Remember, the whole purpose of giving feedback of any kind is what? It's to improve performance. If you are a parent, or if you are a boss, or if you are a person in a relationship, if a person is doing something wrong or inappropriate, the whole purpose in giving them any kind of feedback at all is so that they'll do it better next time. However, there's a direct relationship between self-esteem and destructive criticism. Every time you criticize a person, their self-esteem goes down. Every time their self-esteem goes down, their ability to perform goes down too. Well, if you destructively criticize a person often enough, long enough, and hard enough, they reach the point where they won't try anything at all. They become what we call hypersensitive. And a hypersensitive adult is a person who cannot take criticism from anybody. A hypersensitive adult is a person who is very, very tense and anxious if you even suggest that they're not doing the right thing. If you have to deal with a hypersensitive adult, the key is to sit them down and remember 4 things. Number 1, always begin with praise. Number 2 is protect the person's self-esteem at all costs. Number 3 is discuss the performance, not the person. Talk about the behavior rather than the person. And number 4 is it number 4? Number 4 is to focus on the future versus the past. Focus on what is going to be done differently in the future rather than what has happened in the past. Why is that? A very simple reason is because a person cannot control the past. Not being able to control the past, any criticism over what they've done in the past causes them tremendous stress and frustration. So let me summarize. The key to success in life is a positive mental attitude. A positive mental attitude is based on expectations of success, of a positive set of expectancies. This positive set of expectancies is based on beliefs in your self-concept. The core of your self-concept, which determines your effectiveness in life, is your self-esteem, and your self-esteem is measured by how much you like yourself. The 2 things that hold us back more than anything else are the fears of failure and the fears of rejection. So one of the core secrets of success is this, is become a perpetual self-esteem generating organism. Continually be doing things for yourself, to yourself, in your life that cause you to like yourself, to love yourself, to accept yourself, to respect yourself, that cause you to feel terrific about yourself. If you're a boss or a parent, remember that the key to peak performance in your home and in your workplace is to make people feel terrific about themselves. And the more terrific you feel about yourself, the more you like yourself, the more likely it is that you'll make the people around you like, love, accept, and respect themselves, and you'll create a peak performance environment. It is the starting point to great success and achievement in life. So say over and over to yourself, I like myself, I like myself. I like myself. I like myself.